We are here today with Tanya Coventry-Strader, with the Executive Director with Mothers and Others for Clean Air. And we're kind of in a historic setting that is of interest as we talk about air pollution and the impact of pollution on health, which I think is really important as we talk about sustainability, the concepts under the Catholic teachings, right? And the reason this setting is important is that we're next to the old Yellow River Post Office, which is one of the historic places of the original roads that came out to Gwinnett. So if we go back to the 1860s when Gwinnett had a couple thousand people, you would see a whole different action behind us than you see now. And now we see a road that's a main arterial between three cities that generates somewhere around 17,000 vehicles a day, which includes a lot of school buses, right? Because we've got schools all up and down Five Forks and neighborhoods that are fed by school buses that emit particulates, right?
Yeah.
So that's why we're here today, to talk a little bit about and hear from you about this and about Mothers and Others for Clean Air, of this connection to air pollution, particularly in younger folks, because we know these particulates, when they get in your lungs, stay there. So we're hurting our health all the way along, but at the same time, we look in here and it's beautiful out here, and we don't see these things that we're breathing in. So sometimes it's not real to folks, right? You know, we've known each other for a long time. So I'd really like you maybe tell me a little bit about kind of where you came from, who you are, and kind of why we're here today, because I know you're here because you're really passionate about this.
I came to this pretty naturally. My dad was in the Peace Corps. He met my mom in Costa Rica. She was a teacher at a school for indigenous children, and he was building the school. And my mom had 12 brothers and sisters, and we would spend summers down there. So I grew up basically raising my cousins, like playing with my cousins, caring for my cousins. And so from a very early age, I knew I wanted to be a mother. I cared very deeply for the well-being of children. Over the course of my career, my corporate career, I traveled all over Latin America and saw children in many, many different situations. I was in Brazil at one point with Cartoon Network, and you know, we drove by these favelas, which is a very poverty-stricken area, and there were just hillsides of lean-tos, like literally shanties, a piece of tin roof with a family under it, and you could see the TV flickering under it. So they might not even have walls on their homes, but they had a TV. And that always stayed with me and was in the back of my mind as I continued my career. Like, is this really what I'm doing? And you know, my dad, having been in the Peace Corps and being an educator, was also a great influence for me. And he was like, maybe think about what you're doing.
Well, that's an interesting connection point, because you know, my military time, right, of going back and forth, of seeing how the world really is and how people really live, and it's something that you bring back, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It hits you at a very human level.
I know that you've got a couple of really strong mothers out there that have been really passionate about this topic in Atlanta.
Yes.
And I know, you know, they were, for lack of a better word, the founders of Mothers and Others for Clean Air. What was the connecting point that brought you in, that you said, this is what I want to go spend my time doing?
Stephanie Blank and Laura Turner-Seidel are the moms, and they started Mothers and Others for Clean Air almost 20 years ago now, when Atlanta's air quality was extremely poor. Children in Georgia, across Georgia, had a much higher percentage of asthma than other states around us. So they became aware of this and decided to start Mothers and Others to raise awareness of the fact that our children were struggling with this, and we really needed to do something to improve that. I came to Mothers and Others for Clean Air through Laura Turner-Seidel because my early career was spent at Turner Broadcasting,
that makes sense.
Founded by her dad. In different parts of my career, I had come across Mothers and Others for Clean Air. I was a corporate funder for a time. And when I had my daughter, I realized how very impactful all the things that we are doing in the world, like driving cars and riding school buses, the impact that that has on our health. I was thrilled when there was an opportunity for me to come join Mothers and Others. It was at a great time when there was funding for electric school buses through the EPA. So we felt like we really could have an influence and help school systems access funds so that they could start that transition from the dirty diesel buses that they're using to clean vehicles.
Yeah, as Catholics, right, we're called under Catholic social teachings, right, to care for the vulnerable, which we know children are. How are you engaging through people of faith or other community organizations to help support this idea that, you know, the air we breathe every day is our health care?
Healthy air is health care.
Health care.
Absolutely.
And that we know health care, you can't have climate or sustainability without health. And we have to have clean air to do that. Sometimes we get stuck on thinking that emissions is just around carbon when it's really much broader.
Children are our most vulnerable population, and particularly because their bodies are growing and developing at a much faster rate than ours. So they even breathe at a faster pace than adults do.
Really?
So they're taking in more pollution, more harmful chemicals and particulate matter than the rest of us. The other thing to think about is, while we're sitting in a beautiful park here in Gwinnett next to a roadway,
Right.
unfortunately, many schools are sited next to roadways. Roadways are a huge source of air pollution and particulates. And diesel school buses are a very large source of air pollution and particulates. And in the state of Georgia, over 850,000 children ride a school bus to school every day. And the vast majority of those 20,000 school buses that they ride are diesel school buses. Children riding in a diesel school bus are exposed to almost 15% more toxicity, air pollution, particulate matter than the general public. So it's really an issue that we need to consider. Why are we putting our children in these buses day after day? And incidentally, Gwinnett County is the largest school system in the state of Georgia.
Right.
Many, many school buses, many, many children riding buses for long parts of their day.
School buses pull up to the school. You've got teachers out there.
Absolutely.
At the same time as idling buses that come in that are being exposed, right?
Yeah. One of our first campaigns was a no idling campaign, because as school buses sit outside of schools and idle, children lined up next to the school buses waiting to get on are suffering from asthma attacks. There's several incidences that we've heard of that, children have had really, really serious health implications from that. Teachers suffer from it. We talk to teachers all the time. They're like, yeah, it's kids, but it's also us. I have a terrible headache after, standing outside next to those idling school buses, and the school bus drivers as well.
When we talk about the things we breathe, I think a lot of people think it's just about asthma or some of the diseases that, are associated with pollen. But we know that the health issues go way deeper than that. It's
Absolutely.
Cardiovascular disease, it's kidney disease. So what does that really mean for people when they take that deep breath of, diesel fumed air? What is it really doing? Diesel
pollution is a known carcinogen. There are 40 different toxic fumes in diesel that can cause cancer. And in addition to that, there's study after study now that has revealed that children who ride in diesel buses and are exposed to diesel pollution have cognitive challenges. They don't do as well on tests. Their lungs don't develop as well. And that just in addition to typical allergies. I mean, here we are sitting in Atlanta. Atlanta's allergy season is twice as long as it used to be because of some of this climate change. So all of the things that we're breathing in every day, from pollen to diesel pollution, really affect our health, and it's a cumulative effect. So when we are exposing our youngest members of the community to these levels of pollution, over time, the effects on their health is going to be worse and worse. So that's something that we are really conscious of, and we really are working to mitigate. One of the things that we've found is incredibly effective is working with healthcare professionals and teaching them about how the air we breathe every day, particularly when it's polluted air, next to roadways, et cetera, is affecting public health. And, we're approaching a public health crisis as we start to roll back all of the regulations and policies that the EPA put in place many years ago and people fought hard for. Today we see a lot of people who have COPD because they smoked throughout their youth, and we later learned that that was not very good for health, and people have stopped. And this next generation that's coming along, I think they're going to have a lot of health issues that are a result of the increased level of exposure to pollution that we have. You know, I will say the one piece of hope in this, it's not all hopeless, is that children are resilient and their small bodies are resilient. And so if we can mitigate their exposure to pollution and change that direction, they recover.
So let's convert and talk about this hope and optimism, right? Because that's part of Catholic teaching, right? And that we can act on that, right? Tell me a little bit of what Mother and Others is doing locally and that people should be aware of. Maybe they can advocate, support, and be part of as a community of faith, right? In supporting around what the call from Pope Francis and Pope Leo is on integral ecology.
Collective action is really the best way to get things done. And you can't get there until you educate people and people understand climate change and air pollution is integrally involved with our health and our well-being and the well-being of the environment around us, right? The earth that we live on. We go into communities, particularly disadvantaged communities, where they're more vulnerable to industrial development in their backyard, large transportation hubs, all the things that we know exacerbate air pollution. We go in with our healthcare champions, who are healthcare professionals who we've trained. We teach local communities with a local healthcare champion about the struggles that that community might be dealing with. We listen to them about their concerns, and then we equip them with data and information that they can then take to their policymakers to influence policy.
Right. For example, when you mention school buses, right?
Yes.
This is an opportunity for parents of their children that are, as we know, they fund schools, right?
Yeah.
And have a voice through elected boards to have that voice be heard around protecting their children.
Schools have a lot of competing priorities, and no one wants to see our children come to harm, but I think a lot of times school systems, people, parents don't realize the impacts that diesel pollution can have. So as much as we can educate them about that and influence them to think about transitioning their older diesel buses to cleaner electric buses, or to other alternative fuels that are maybe cleaner burning than diesel. We have a lot of partners in communities that really can help us. Mothers and Others is a very small organization, but we work in coalition with a lot of larger organizations, one of them being GIPL.
Georgian Faith Power and Light.
Yes, and United Women of Faith, and many others who have a much larger base that can help us get the word out.
You're looking at being practical, right? So we know right now that probably converting bus fleets all electric is probably maybe a bridge too far for today, but there are things we can do in between, and I know you're working on one of those.
Yes. While electric school buses are the gold standard because they have zero harmful pollution, we have 20,000 school buses in Georgia. It is going to be decades before we can replace them all with clean vehicles. So in the meantime, we have been made aware of a new piece of technology, which is a monitor and air purifier that can be installed into a diesel school bus or any school bus aftermarket. This is the air monitor, so it monitors the quality of the air on the school bus, and then based on the inputs that the school system puts in, this turns the air purifier on. So it's no bigger than really like a light or a speaker. It can clean VOCs and particulate matter, and also biological things like germs and viruses and stuff. They're quite low priced. It's remarkably effective in some tests that we've seen to improve air quality in school buses 70%. If you improve the air on a school bus, you're improving air for 500 students a day, and they're easy to install. So we're helping school systems apply for grants, but what we need is parent organizations to reach out to their communities and to their school boards and tell them that this is important to them, that this is a priority for their spending.
And I think that's the key, priority in spending, because I think the tendency of, fleet managers and others is to think, how do I deliver the cheapest transportation for that transaction? But they don't necessarily include what's the impact and cost of those decisions on children's health that ultimately we as parents have to deal with, not just through the cost of health care, but through all the suffering that comes with that. That should be considered and be thought about in decision makers, I think.
These are things that directly affect school districts, absenteeism rates, test scores, children's ability to be attentive and prepared to attend school because they don't have a headache or they're not sniffling, are all things that our school districts need to think about when they're thinking about transportation.
And I think the last thing I wanted to touch on is the policy conversation, right? Because, these are things in our community, but we know, and you touched on this, that, we're seeing a pullback on policy, quite frankly, of the value of a human life in decision making around policies. We're seeing data centers come in with diesel generators that put out lots of particulates. There's proposed rules out there to actually reduce permitting requirements, which just expose communities to more particulates, particularly from diesels, right? And so, you represent more than just Georgia, right?
Absolutely.
And you work with other organizations on health. And I know I've seen this because I've seen the endangerment finding, which was an EPA policy.
Yes. Over the 20 or so years that we've been here, many policies were put into place. The endangerment finding is one of them, that improved our air quality and regulated our ability to meet specific minimum criteria for the quality of the air that we wanted to have. In the last year or so, we've seen this incredible pullback of policy that was made to protect human life, and an emphasis on corporate wealth and corporate well-being over the importance of human life. We work with a lot of our physicians and healthcare professionals to let our policymakers know that that this is a decision that is going to have a huge impact on public health, not just now, but in the foreseeable future. And we really hope that congregations,
people of good faith,
families, communities will pull together and let it be known that this is not okay. This is not what we believe in, and we need to, as we see school buses driving by right now, people need to take a moment to become more aware of what these policy changes are going to do for us.
Pope Leo, I think he made a really important speech on January the 1st, and he was kind of wrapping up with the death of Pope Francis, kind of his calling on integral ecology, that basically says that, our economic systems and the way we value things does not serve people, does not serve nature very well, and we are called to take action against that. I think you've left some thoughts for people to think about what does that mean in your community, what does that mean in your school, and then, maybe if you're really called to do this on collective action, on advocacy, what you can talk to your congresspeople about.
Absolutely.
Around the importance of health and policy.
I just want people to know, if they come to mothersandOthersforcleanair.org, we have lots and lots of resources, blogs, information about all of these topics and ways that they can take action.
Excellent. Thank you, Tanya, for spending time with us today and talking a little bit about Mothers and Others and your personal story. And I'm one of your followers. I have a lot of respect for you and appreciate everything you do.
Thank you, Jay. It was a great pleasure to be here with you today.